Chips is a fun little snack to have, but that's not the only thing they should be eating. So a good sandwich with some whole grain breads and some protein and some cheese on it, that protein will help fuel them for the rest of the day. Fresh fruits and vegetables, that's always a good snack. It's got some good crunch to it, also some good nutrition. But always think through that. Make sure it's a nutritious meal to give them as much nutrition as possible to make it through the day.
In addition to packing a school lunch that has nutritional value, it's important to consider food safety. According to a Kansas State University food scientist, dangerous bacteria can rapidly build up in food that is not kept at a safe temperature and can cause food-borne illness. On today's Sound Living, tips for safely preparing bagged lunches. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman. Karen Blakeslee, who is also the coordinator of the university's Rapid Response Center, says the key to packing a school lunch that will remain out of the danger zone for bacteria to grow is making sure cold foods stay cold and hot foods stay hot. Karen, won't be long and we'll start sending kids back to school with those lunch boxes, and that's really one of the keys is making sure that they have one of those insulated bags.
Yeah, some kind of insulated bag. There's all kinds of lunch boxes out there these days. You know, back in the old days, it truly was a lunch box. Now it's more the insulated bag or lunch bag type carrier for your lunches. So those really do help keep your cold foods cold. And that way you can have a safe lunch by the time you're ready to eat it.
Talk a little bit about those bags and how they really work, because sometimes I'm really confused as to how this thin thing actually keeps stuff cold.
Well, it is a pretty high-tech material that they use that can help keep it cold. Does it keep it cold forever? No. So it does have a limited amount of time. They're really good for keeping things cold for about 4 hours. Beyond that, you really have to have a lot of ice packs in there for it to really work. But they are helpful. They do help keep the cold in, but they have a limited amount of time that can be done.
You touched on something really important there, the fact that you do need something frozen in there to really make it work effectively.
Yeah, and it's best to have at least 2 frozen things, whether that's those ice packs that you can refreeze multiple times. You can even freeze juice boxes, which is really handy, and then they'll be mostly thawed out by the time you're ready to use them. That'll help keep things cold. But the ice packs especially, they make them in all different sizes so that they will easily fit into the size of lunch bag that you're going to use.
We're trying to keep that to around 40 degrees, but I'm assuming that there's some flexibility there because it's really not going to probably stay at that constant temperature?
Yeah, the goal is to keep it at 40, but you want to try to keep things cold as possible. So prep your food the night before if you can. Put that in the refrigerator so it's good and cold to start with. That'll help keep things cold longer. Put the ice pack next to the item that really does need to be cold, like your sandwich. For example, your potato chips, not so much. Doesn't need to be refrigerated. Vegetables, those can be kept cool. Fruit, leave them whole, if possible, like your apple or banana, something like that. Those don't require refrigeration. So kind of think through what really does need to be kept cold. And it's likely probably your sandwich that needs to be kept cold. Now, on the other hand, if you have some kind of hot food, you've got to keep it hot. So there's all kinds of insulated containers out there now, way more than what there used to be. And so use those types of things. And again, they don't last all day long, but they're good for lasting about 4 hours.
One of the things you're really touching on here is the fact that you kind of need to have a menu or at least a plan for what you're going to do with those school lunches.
Yeah, plan out your menu for the week. And that way you know what to shop for. Get them ready. Get the kids involved. If it's their sack lunch, have them help you get things ready. And that way they participate in it, and they'll probably more likely eat it, too, if they help fix it. So plan that out. Get them ready. What needs to be cold, get it in the refrigerator the night before. Freeze it if you need to, if that's necessary. And then it's an easy way to pack a quick lunch in the morning when you're rushing out the door.
You mentioned kind of the protein, the fruit, the vegetables, and that's all part of having a good, healthy lunch. We want to make sure that we're not just giving them something to eat, but something that's going to get them through the rest of the day and keep that energy level up.
Absolutely. Think through that and always try to make sure that you pack something nutritious. Yeah, chips is a fun little snack to have, but that's not the only thing they should be eating. So a good sandwich with some whole grain breads and some protein and some cheese on it. That protein will help fuel them for the rest of the day. Fresh fruits and vegetables, that's always a good snack. It's got some good crunch to it and also some good nutrition. Dairy products, well, if you put cheese on the sandwich, that will work for that. Usually, maybe you could get a little carton of milk at school. They might let you buy that. So that's something to think about. But always think through that. Make sure it's a nutritious meal to give them as much nutrition as possible to make it through the day.
In terms of, I guess, actually putting this together, we want to make sure that we're still observing all of our normal food safety rules when we're working in the kitchen.
Absolutely. The number one thing we all should be doing is washing our hands frequently, not just for food safety, but for overall health. And that can help cut down a whole lot of spread of germs and viruses and everything that we deal with. And in the food world, that does help prevent a lot of food safety issues. A lot of times I see foodborne illness outbreaks that come through the news wire, and a lot of times it'll say poor personal hygiene is the reason why this happened. Essentially, that is just not washing your hands. So it's a simple task that everybody can do. 20 seconds, warm soapy water is best. So rub them and rinse them off, and you're done, and you're ready to go. Always start with good, clean equipment. You know, make sure you clean up after you've prepped the meal, clean up after yourself. You don't want to leave a bunch of dirty dishes sitting around in the sink for days on end, because you would just invite all kinds of problems that way. So clean as you go and be smart about how you handle the food. Keep your cold foods cold and your hot foods hot.
And this also goes for the children when they're at school before lunch. Make sure that the teachers are probably going to encourage you to do it, but make sure that you actually do it.
Absolutely, yes. I'm pretty sure that teachers, they do make it a strong effort to make sure everybody washes their hands, even if they just are standing in line to go to the bathroom. You know, that's what they need to be doing. You could also add a little extra insurance and pack those disposable wipes into the lunch bags so that they could use to wipe off their hands, especially after they've eaten the lunch.
One of the things I think we often forget, at least I did as a parent, was the fact that those lunch boxes are going to get dirty too, and they need to be cleaned out. I'm assuming probably every day would be best, but at least every few days?
Absolutely. You know, always check for the condition, make sure they're intact, make sure there's no tears or rips and things like that. And if they're washable, wash them. You know, put them in the washing machine if that's possible. Otherwise, take a warm soapy rag and wipe it down as best as you can. Clean the inside especially, because spills could have happened. Food could have leaked out of the bags that they were in. And so you always want to clean that up so that it doesn't get moldy and start to grow things that you don't want to have.
And you might even want to have two of these if you've got one child, maybe two per child.
Yeah, it might not be a bad idea. That way, if you have to clean them up, it's got time to dry out in between. So alternate those. And another thing, too, that kids can do is, you know, if it's possible, and the schools offer this, is to put their lunch bags in a refrigerator. Some schools may have that option, and that's always a good way to make sure the lunches stay cold.
We know that kids don't always eat everything that's put into the bag, so there's some things that it's fine. The fruit, the vegetables, going to be fine throughout the day, but there's some things you really can't eat past lunch.
Yeah, especially if you have what we call perishable foods, and that would be something like a meat or a cheese. So you want to make sure that if there are leftovers of that, help the child understand that if they're not going to eat it all, then they should probably throw it away. Now, I know that contributes to food waste, but also think through when you're building the lunch, how much does your child eat? And kind of have a plan in mind to only pack what they will eat. And that way they won't have any leftovers. And then any leftover packaging that's disposable, like the sandwich bags or whatever, throw those away. Those don't need to be brought back home. So that's something that you can work with your child and educate them and help them understand, okay, if you have this leftover, well, we can't bring that back home.
There are also food allergens that we need to be aware of, and really what that means is don't switch food.
Yeah, that can be really scary. There's a lot of people that do have allergies to different foods. So be aware of that. And again, it takes some education on your part to help the child understand. Don't share this with anybody because your friends might have an allergen, such as peanut butter, for example. Peanut butter sandwich is very popular, but if you trade food with somebody and they are allergic to peanuts, that can be deadly. So that's not a good idea. It's nice to be friendly. I get that, but you also don't want to hurt anybody.
The other thing that is rapidly approaching is football season, high school and college level. That means a lot of tailgating, and that, of course, brings up some food safety concerns because we're outdoors. Sometimes it's really hot for those first few games, so we need to practice food safety there, too.
Absolutely. It all works together. And so tailgating can be a whole lot of fun. But again, planning ahead and knowing if you know how many people are coming to your tailgate, that can help you plan the food. You can ask others to bring certain dishes or a favorite dish or even the snacks like chips and things like that or beverages. That's easy for your guests to bring, and then you take care of the main meals. But again, keeping your hands clean, now that's a challenge. So you could have some wet washcloths available for people to wipe their hands off. It's got some soap on them. Pack those ahead of time and people can use them, or at least clean the visible dirt off. And then have a hand sanitizer available. That's always helpful. Now, those work best if your hands are clean to start with. So if your hands are dirty, they really don't do their job. So keep that in mind when you're out there. Now, keeping things cold, have several ice chests. I like to tell people keep your beverages in one, keep the food in another. That way things keep separated. You could even go as far as if you're going to be cooking raw meats like hamburgers and things like that. Put those in a separate ice chest. That way they're separated from the other ready-to-eat food and separate from the beverages. May seem like a lot, but it can really eliminate a whole lot of problems. So think through those things, especially when it's still hot like this. And we all know these football games can be really hot to start with. And so ice is important.
Well, then we often get there really early in the morning, and sometimes halftime isn't until 5 or 6 hours later. So that's maybe one of the real danger areas, is making sure that everything is put away safely.
Exactly. Make sure you bring along some extra reclosable bags or containers to put the leftovers in, because hopefully you'll have smaller quantities left over or not even any leftovers. That's even better. But if you do have leftovers, put them in a smaller container and then bury them in the ice. You want them to get as cold as possible. So you can put them back into the ice chest that you used. You just have to put them in some kind of container that's closable. And that will help keep things cold until you're ready to go home.
And ice really does a nice job.
Oh, yeah. And it works even better if there's a little water in there. It helps the ice swim around and it helps distribute the cold even better. So, yeah, ice does work pretty well.
And I guess when we're done, make sure that you're sending stuff home with people who brought it.
Yeah, you don't want to take anything extra that you really don't need. So whoever's contributed to your tailgate party, especially if they have containers and stuff like that, make sure they get them back so that they can take them back home.
That's Kansas State University food scientist Karen Blakeslee. As coordinator of the university's Rapid Response Center, Karen publishes a monthly newsletter filled with food safety and food-related information. That publication is available online at rrc.ksu.edu. Sound Living is a weekly public affairs program produced by Research and Extension at Kansas State University. I'm Jeff Wichman, and this is the K-State Radio Network.